Hey everyone, welcome back to the winning characteristics video with Ray from Trayline. And today we'll be walking through the chart of Coinbase, discussing its leadership blueprints that's shown since its IPO. And if you want to learn more about these leadership blueprints, you can check out the course, which is linked down below, to really get an exhaustive explanation of what we're talking about. So with that, Ray, I'll hand it over to you and let's talk about Coin since its IPO and also our recent trades in the name this past week.
So as we've been doing in the series is going bar by bar from the IPO day and down into where the stock is actually going to get actionable. So I'll be picking it up from bar one and basically, which is the IPO day. This is one of those names where pretty much everybody knows about it in terms of it's about to be listed in public on the markets, the crypto talk, these guys being, one of the leaders in that space with their platform that allows you to trade cryptocurrencies. So for me, all of that is good and fine, but I stick with price volume and really what the chart is going to tell me to do to sort of dictate my actions. Because I have a defined method and a system that's either going to get me in if the action is really good or keep me out if the action is not right according to my system. So if we pick it up from bar one here, there's really not much to see on the first day. And I know many traders and very successful ones that basically try to avoid day one as best as they can because they need some more information. They want to see institutions step up even after it opens up above its offering price, and basically have a little more information so that they can make wise decisions, especially based on the charts, if they have a technical aspect in their trading. So picking it up here, there was really no real reason to be getting involved as we go from its IPO week, which is usually I define it as day one to day five, the first 5 days as the IPO week. And from that point on, the stock is not really, one, it's not trading tight.
Yeah.
Two, the question I always ask myself is my edge showing, right? If I'm placing a trade and I'm investing my hard-earned cash, is it something that's going to net me a return or net me a possible positive return? It doesn't matter how good the story is or whatever the case might be. If this isn't showing for me, I'm not going to be investing in that particular name. So as we go down, this name basically from its day one all the way down doesn't really give us a proper entry area where we see tight action or tight action, which is basically indicative of institutions being involved in a big way where they want to control, right? We want to see institutions control stock because me and you sure as hell can't be doing that in the market, especially on a name that traded 80 million on day one.
Right.
So for me, I had this on one of my 3 key watch lists that I defined, which is the IPO watch list. And it really never gave me a reason or never really, it convinced me to invest in it until very recently, which we'll get to right about here. So at this point, when the stock enters a larger base, which is fairly clear with a high of 430 here and down to about 200 here, what we're looking for is what we describe as the anatomy of a base. And one of the first things when bases form, and we've discussed this in previous videos, is we look for volume anchors. And volume anchors are defined as high volume, a very high volume day within this larger base that closes, fairly up on the session. Price reacts on that particular day. And it's also significant that it was basically the highest since the IPO week. So the volume anchor on coin was this particular day right here. And then we basically track that level because that becomes a fairly important level to sort of gauge where the stock is within its current base structure that it's building. The second thing that we look for is some sort of evidence that the basing pattern is now complete, right, or near its conclusion. We never really know when, but one of the things that we do look for to get in early, and that's a leadership blueprint, is these launchpad formations, where price on a 10-day, 21-day, 50-day, and a 65-day, sort of the moving averages bunch up, and price has to get directional, either up or down in a big way. So as the base is forming, first thing you want to look for is volume anchor. You draw a line right across. That's going to be a level of interest for you. And then the second one, to spot a fairly early reversal within the base structure, is going to be to look for this launchpad characteristic. Now, if I quickly flip over to trading view, so this is an indicator that we wrote in trading view. So the diamonds basically show this launchpad structure that built out. So this is our volume anchor that we talked about. And then later on within this base, we formed a launchpad. Price tried to rally and get up, up above that, but sort of was pushed back in within the base. So, and then now we see another potential launchpad forming after its recent run up. So if you guys haven't checked this out, go ahead, and if you use TradingView to add this particular indicator that sort of labels them for you. So switching back to stock charts, so we have our volume anchor, which is this level. We have our potential launchpad. So this would be really the first area ever since it's IPO'd that I would be interested in even trading this name to get a return on my investment, right? So even if, I do get involved in here, and you could see that, there's really nothing else going for this name other than the fact that, it's formed a launchpad. This would still be on my ledger. It won't be a leadership type of name that I'm, jumping up and down, very excited about owning, because it's likely not the best name in the market at this point, given the information that we're seeing in the RS line. Mm-hmm. So that, just analyzing the stock after the fact, and then asking myself, where is my edge? In this case, the edge would be the launchpad, which would be the formation right around here. And then you could get in maybe through that 250 mark and see if you could get a return there. So again, the market remains in an uptrend. It gets pushed back down. So one of the things that we say is winners don't make excuses, right? When winning stocks make excuses, that means they're not ready, especially when the market is in an uptrend. There really is no market pressure. This shouldn't be the first one to come in and go back into that particular base structure. So and on this particular day, we know right away, this day, we know right away that it's not ready yet. Because again, when it's time to go and the stock wants to lead the market, it's not going to do this. It's going to consolidate, form a level. Volume is going to dry up because there's a lack of sellers, and then it's going to keep going on its trajectory up because it wants to lead in the markets. So, Richard, do you want to add anything before I keep going?
No, nothing too much. Just to clarify, with the volume anchor, basically, very simply, above it is good, below it is bad. And that's just kind of a very simplified way of determining whether kind of buyers or sellers are in control within that base. So that's really the only thing I would add that you didn't go over already.
So picking back up right about at this point, so the stock breaks down, it tells you that it's not ready yet. At that point, if you're long and if you have a proper entry area, given that the edge that you have at play, which is a launchpad forming, you would get in at about 250, right? You would get a fairly good return out of this name as it rallies up into. This would be the first warning, the fact that it opened, tried to rally, and was pushed back down. And then if you weren't convinced, it convinced you the next day that it's time to get out, or else you're going to be coming back in for a flat return on your trade. So keeping with that theme, right? So the stock comes back in and the market sort of, pushes it back in. And we don't really get it. There's really no other entry area at this point. We have another formation that was fairly similar to this area, form at this area. And what I feel is that's important is to really pay attention to these inside days
Hmm.
that we get after a rally, 1 day and a 2 day rally in the markets. And then this particular inside day, what makes it important is the fact that the volume was below average. When these happen, if you pull up a chart of BROS recently, it moved above that $50 mark, and then it had an inside day the very next day. And that this day reminds me of that the candle on Bros, where it's telling you that there's a lack of sellers on that down day, and more often than not, in a cooperative market, which we were still in a fair, the market wasn't under pressure yet, the stock is going to rally up and out of that. So pull up Bros on your end, take a look at it. It had a very similar one, but what Coin ran into was basically ran into the market. So we go into a correction, and Coin, uses that as a fairly good excuse to come right back in. So even if you got involved right at this point, it would have warned you right here, and then it would have warned you the very next day to sort of get out so that you could avoid being taken out to the cleaners, right? So what's interesting about this recent action, which is fairly the reason why we're even doing this video in the first place, is the fact that while the market was in correction, right near the end of that correction, as the market was coming up and out, it started exhibiting RS days. So the market was still under pressure. It sort of picked itself up and was sort of, up off the bottom. If you have a key watch list, which is the IPO watch list, and you have a name that's, been in the market's eyes, everybody knows about it, about what they're doing. You would notice that it put in about 1 to 4 days of RS days where it's telling you that the name now has a bid in the markets while the market. So this is the market correction, the market being under pressure off highs, and Coin bucking the trend coming off of its lows. That's a clear, visible sign. There's no opinion involved in saying that, because we clearly see it on the chart and it's in the data that we're seeing. So this was really the first time, the second time I would have really been, excited to own a name like this, to maybe potentially do something like this when the market pressure lifted and we went up and out. So Richard, maybe you want to cover your entries first, and then I'll sort of talk about how, I sort of messed this up and was fairly late to it, but still got a fairly good return.
Sure. And before I do that, I do want to add that this name, Coinbase, is somewhat correlated to the price action of other cryptos, Bitcoin, Ethereum. If you look at the chart, this last kind of consolidation starting right here started when Bitcoin pulled back under its 50-day. And then this recent run up is when Bitcoin and other crypto have been incredibly strong. So I will be looking in the future to see whether it kind of decouples from that and kind of stands alone on its own, and can trend without Bitcoin running. So that is one thing I'm watching. To talk about my entries, Ray, could you first go over to the TradingView chart, because the anchor VWAP from the highs is something that I incorporated into my system recently, and this is part of this trade for me. So first of all, the anchored VWAP is basically the volume weighted average price from a particular day, and here we've got it anchored to the IPO day. So it kind of gives you a sense of the sentiment of the net holders of this stock. So if it's above the anchor VWAP, that means most people are at a profit, but if it's below it, most people are at a loss. So it's very important to see a push through that before a stock is ready to move out the right-hand side. And we finally saw a definitive close of that the day prior on that Friday. So on the weekend, I was looking for setups. This popped up on my list. I also had SI in a similar space, crypto related stock on my list, and this was one of the four stocks I was watching on that Monday. And I was basically watching for some type of consolidation, some range to form, and then a breakout to push through some pivots here, including the close of Friday as well as that anchor VWAP, maybe an undercut and reclaim of that level. So that's exactly what we got on that Monday. We had initial pull in under that anchor VWAP and a rally above, and I basically entered the stock right at that point, right at that level. And let me bring up the chart of coin. I've got my cost here written on it. My cost was 276.25, so a little bit above the open also of that Monday. And yeah, from there I was basically at a profit right away. That's the best sign that a trade will be successful. My initial risk was right at that low of the day, so I was fully willing to take a small loss in a high potential name that had a ton of volume coming in as well. The volume buzz was over 500% at that point. And another level I was watching was the high volume close, as I mentioned, and these pivots that Ray's drawing on the screen right now. And it basically continued to push up on volume. The subsequent days are also good closing ranges on high volume. So at this moment, it's acting really well. But obviously, it is up very sharply over the course of 5 days. I would expect some type of pullback, natural correction, ideally on lower volume, a drift lower, letting those key moving averages catch back up to price. And it is also running into some supply right near the IPO day, that IPO week. So it'll be interesting to see how it reacts to that and whether we can fully build out the right-hand side and make its way to all-time highs, or if it'll kind of stall for a few weeks at this level before pushing up, or if it just fails and falls back into the base. But regardless, my stop's in profit right now. I got a pretty decent entry. It's always good to be at a profit right away. And yeah, I'll just be kind of managing things from here. But yeah, that's kind of how I handle things. Ray, why don't you talk about kind of your experience with coin as well?
Yeah. So what I sort of messed up. So I'll go over why I feel I should have executed better is the fact that when we're in a correction and we see a bunch of RS days come up on a stock, and at that point, likely, I mean, it might not be your first name, second name, or third name, but it should be on your radar, especially after this bar. So this particular
Right.
bar is that 3-bar break, right? And Oliver Kell, if you follow him, he would call this the ignite bar. Basically, we're breaking above the prior 3 closes in a single session on an increase in volume. When we're doing that, you sure do want to pay attention to it. The second piece of evidence that we had was we had RS day 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, about 5 RS days. That tells you that there's a consistent bid in this particular name.
Right.
And if you're making RS list while the market is coming down, coin is going to say, I'm up on the day. Coin is going to say, I'm up on the day. I'm up on the day. So in terms of the entry that I had on this particular name, this was, one of the very few names that I felt obligated to sort of chase out of my comfort zone. But I felt, very few names do that when I'm trading these days. And I pretty much got in at about this particular day around that 284 mark, which really I should have been paying attention to this 280 at the very least, and sort of get closer to that 280 average. But this was one of those where it went through that high and volume was on pace to be greater than the prior day at that point in time as well. So given that, the reason I was buying into those 284, 285 area was basically, it had what we needed in terms of bucking the trend while the market was under pressure. And there's always a good chance when stocks that show RS while the market's in correction will act like this when the market pressure is lifting. Now, the other thing, in terms of the action that I'm expecting on this particular name, is going to be, I expect some sort of consolidation to happen. There's a lot of overhead resistance up on this left side here, especially as we go into the close of the IPO day and up. This is a fairly large bar for this thing to overcome. So I'm basically, watch the 10-day ride up. If it wants to watch the 21-day, maybe very good down day to see how the volume is on that particular day, right? So at this point, it's good. Everybody's excited. It's going up. Everybody just, you bought it and it's just up right away. What separates the best traders is they're going to be looking for information on how it acts on down days, right? It's all fine and, good when things are going up, but how you interpret the action once we see some pressure on the indexes, or if we do see pressure on the indexes and this sucker keeps going up, that adds to your conviction and the evidence that you see. So watch this guy on down days, watch the volume as it comes down, as it runs into overhead supply, how it acts and how it responds to that is what creates a leader in the markets after it's exhibited this RS air, the RS right in this particular zone. So that's what I'm going to be watching. I expect, maybe we just right now I have a line drawn at about 300. I just manage versus whole numbers, just easy for me to keep track of it. If it drifts in, holds 200, builds RS versus 300, and builds evidence versus that 300. Whatever I bought right about here, I'm going to be adding and seeing if I could double up my position and really get, into this name with higher conviction if it acts well on down days in the markets.
Perfect.
So, I mean, pretty much this is a
ahead.
fairly quick one, right? It keeps it, there's not much history of the stock, but it's the same old characteristics. When things start outperforming while the market's under pressure, pay attention, and you have a possibility that this thing could really turn into a leader as it goes up its right side over the next couple of weeks.
Absolutely. I think it's worth going over to MarketSmith quickly and showing the standout earnings, sales margins in this name. I mean, this really is what you want to see in terms of fundamentals. You also have some high quality funds in there. The funds recently have been declining somewhat, but we'll have to see whether that changes in the upcoming report, given the very strong volume that's clearly shown on the MarketSmith log volume chart here. And the annual estimates for this year are huge, a little bit down for next year, but the estimate revisions are up. And yeah, it just remains to be seen. How does it handle those stress tests? Does it pull back gently into 300? And can it overcome that overhead supply? And with that, I think I've covered most of what I want to say. This is a leading stock in a leading group. The crypto theme is strong. A lot of miners are doing great as well. Yeah, Ray, any closing words about coin and what to look for?
Yeah, basically watch for it, how it acts on down days. That 300 level, it's just a psychological level for it to hold. How it acts on down days is going to dictate if this leader it's a 3-day leader versus a 3-month leader, right?
Right.
So really, interpret the action on those days, how they're acting. Are institutions coming in to support stock while things are, under pressure as a whole? That's really what all that matters. So I'll be watching that 300 over the next couple of days here.
Perfect. We'll leave it there. Thanks so much for watching. If you enjoyed, go ahead and leave a like down below. If you haven't yet, go ahead and subscribe as well. If you want more information about leadership blueprints and what we look for and want to learn in a very organized manner, go ahead and check out the leadership blueprints course. It'll be linked down below in the description and popping up right now. And with that, thanks so much for watching. I'll see you guys in future videos. Thanks.